Hello, you guys, and welcome to the Woman's Cave. And yes, I'm rushing today because I am happily self-sustained. First of all, let me say, my wish has come true, therefore I get to drink to it. Yay.
Yeah, okay, I think we just have, like, one of the best people.
Guest ever. Okay, our guest said we could do this, and I was like, what?
She said we could drink on camera, which, like, yay! If you know the ladies, you know we try to drink off camera and not on camera, but like that.
Yeah, anyway, moving on, because we're not nearly as much fun as we'd like to be, and I want to get to the guests.
Oh, really?
I don't know.
I'm Jay, though.
Oh, no, it's on my elbow.
Yeah,
we remember.
Yup.
All right.
Do a little dance.
Okay.
All right.
Back to
we definitely been drinking, y'all, because we doing a little dance.
I know.
Yeah.
And it actually looked like it was on rhythm with nothing. There's no music, and it was like, oh, it's making its own beat. It's not even off rhythm. Okay, I'm done. Moving on, we wrote books, literary life guides that are pop poetry. Jay, didn't you need to say stuff?
Wait, what? Okay, so, sure. And we wrote Literary Life Guides, a pop poetry, and the Anti-Thought series, Anti-Thought, Divorce was Bad, with other life lessons, available on Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, and AndWeThought.com, and Audible. Also, we are picking out the cover art for our next audiobook. If you got an email from me, please answer me, because there are 3 great covers, and we cannot choose. And like, literally, if you got to, please answer me, y'all, because I need to get this book out here, because Joe Sands did such a wonderful job, and it's so funny. We laughed at our own jokes. And that name of the title is And I Thought Being Grown Up Was Easy.
Come on, you're laughing at that. You're grown up. You already know you're like, I did.
Right, so the 3 great covers, and all of them. Help us pick one.
All right, we're also for the Misfit Guide. Wait. Oh, there it is!
The Misfit Guides are sassy way to leave cooking fingerprints into all of those Misfit Guides. And one of our all-only poetry books, If Only I Were Me, available only on BarnesandNoble.com and AndWeThought.com. But basically, if you go to AndWeThought.com and click the If Only I Were Me, it will just take you right on over to Barnes & Noble. So
there you go. Also, we are the founder of the 25 Hottest Indie Authors, Artists, and Advocates magazine. Did I say indie? I did say indie, didn't I?
I don't know. I got so used to you not saying indie. So
hold
indie.
I'm clearing up my mind. Hold on.
Yes,
it wasn't an indie.
It's 196 pages, and it's only $7.50. So if you are tired of talking to people, now would be a good time to make that purchase.
Because the magazine is about yay big, so you can do this. And when you just poke your head out and be like, I'm reading.
I'm trying to develop my craft.
Put your iPad in there. Don't even read it. Just keep turning pages and move the iPad to another section.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Do all of that. You can find out everything your ladies are doing on www.andwethought.com.
Do I get to do the intro for the guest?
Yes, of course. Because it's your guest, and she lets drink on camera, so do what you want.
Okay, so you're not here to hear about us, you guys. You are here to hear about our wonderful guests. I did say you guys. I should have said y'all. You're not here to hear about us, y'all. You're here to hear about our wonderful guests. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, my name is Alex Cresswick. I love whiskey.
Oh,
Someone said it.
Okay. Someone said it.
Pretty much all you need to know about me, I think. It's a good summation of my personality traits right there.
I don't know. I think they also need to know you're from South Carolina, and we can talk barbecue, which is
Oh, absolutely. I grew up in South Carolina. I went to school at Wake Forest in North Carolina, and then I ran all the way across the country to Los Angeles, California, and started working in the film business.
That is amazing.
That's amazing.
Okay, first of all, it's amazing that you actually made it in the film business, because every time we go out there, it's a bunch of people like, I tried, and then they didn't. And then you're like, oh, God, how hard is this? And it's nice to see you made it. Okay, before we get started on real stuff, I just have to ask, do you go to the barbecue festivals down there in South Carolina when you were younger? Which one was the best?
I don't remember ever going to a barbecue festival. We went to things like the Okra Strut and things like that. But interestingly enough, when I was in high school, where you got your barbecue was a political declaration, because there were 2 competing, not really fast food, but South Carolina barbecue trains. One was called Maurice's and one was called Melvin's, and they were brothers. And Maurice had the better barbecue, the better sauce, this was better, but was a violent racist. And Melvin was his brother who went, hey, you're a violent racist. We don't like you. Come eat at my barbecue, which is like just a little bit worse, but just like his. And so depending on where you went was like a declaration of certain intents. And the history of Maurice is actually really interesting. There's a long form New Yorker piece where somebody wrote that's like almost 13 pages that goes into the history of Maurice's, because he was one of the first people to get hit. Anti-discrimination laws used to be rooted in interstate commerce. And he was the first person that was, I mean, he's just, his racism cannot be understated, especially for South Carolina. Like, the man was just god awful. And until his death, there was like segregationist Confederate literature right at the entrance of all of his establishments. It was just very bad. And the whole rule of it was if you did any interstate commerce, you couldn't discriminate against anyone. And he went, well, everything that I use is from South Carolina, so I can do whatever I want. And he would have people patrolling the parking lots to make sure if anybody had a non-South Carolina license plate, he wouldn't serve people from out of state. He got all of his hogs, all of his dishes, all of the cleaning stuff he used. It was all interstate. He got taken all the way up to the court, and the only thing that nobody had seen was his recipe for the actual mustard-based barbecue sauce, which is the only great barbecue sauce I maintain to this day. And nobody had seen it, and the judge was like, look, I have to see what's in this mustard-based barbecue sauce to make sure that it's all from here. And he was like, nope, trade secrets, can't see it. And the judge went, well, I'll read it under in my chamber so no one else sees it. He read it, he came up and he went, you use French's mustard, that is an interstate ingredient. You now you cannot discriminate against anybody. You have to like start treating your employees correctly. And it was that one ingredient that got him. And after that, the law started changing that you just like couldn't discriminate against people, period. So like the history of barbecue in South Carolina is incredibly political.
Wow. Have I read that before?
Yeah, I think you
said like it was a state law.
I have.
I remember that. That's interesting.
I remember.
Was that really just like it was like a Carolina, like it's not just the South Carolina, like North Carolina has that law too.
Yeah, well, it was for everybody. The discrimination laws were based in interstate commerce and not just in how you were behaving to your employees. So like if he had done any interstate commerce, if he had served anybody not from South Carolina, he was in violation of the law. But since he kept everything local, like because it was a federal thing and South Carolina had no interest in actually, being like, hey, don't be a dick. So yeah, he very much kept like, tried to continue being as racist as possible until people were like, hey, no, you can't do that. And it got so bad that actually all of our local stores stopped carrying his sauces. Yeah.
Oh. I mean, it's horrible that the guy was a racist. It's also horrible for your taste buds that you didn't have his sauce. I'm trying to weigh that out. No, racism wins.
No, racism wins every time.
Yeah. Like, my family went to Melvin's, just straight up racist, and then he died, and his kids went, yeah, our dad was pretty terrible, and took down all the bad stuff and did like a huge mea culpa and tried to really resuscitate the brand, because like, oh, it was really good, but it was not worth crossing that line. Nothing is that good.
Appreciate that so much, because I know I'm African American and I still would have been like, how good is it? No, I'm not going.
No.
But is
the
that
hush
good?
puppies were great too. Yeah.
Okay, anyway, let's try to segue this. I'm not sure how we're gonna do this because we don't segue.
I mean, this ties into my job, which I'm a sensitivity reader, what we call a social impact producer in the film business. So like this kind of historical context is a lot of stuff that I throw at writers where I'm like, hey, so you wrote something in your script and I know what you intended to say, but here's what you actually said. Do those two things match? And generally they go, no, they do not. And I'm like, cool. So let's talk about how we can get your intent to match what you're actually writing and showing people on screen. So this kind of tangent where I take you down the historical road is actually like very much part of my job.
Nice. And She separated it for us. No, was it? No. It's a pandemic. Ebola elbows. Yes.
Elbows on that one, yes. There we go.
Right.
Yeah. We don't do segues, but that was amazing.
That was a good segue.
So since you do sensitivity, how did you get started in the business? And then just take us on up to how you do this now.
Well, I came right after college. I came out here and I did the UCLA Producers Program, which is a 2-year professional program that really teaches you the ins and outs of the basics of the industry and encourages you to do internships. And I've always been really drawn to the development aspect of it. I like the written word, I like stories, I like breaking them down and exploring the themes and how they relate to real world. And it's one of the reasons that I like both sci-fi and horror a lot, because you can tell stories that aren't necessarily accessible to people and put them in a different perspective and be like, it's like this, and have them be emotionally invested in a way that maybe they haven't been, or the world actively encourages them not to be. But it's really hard to do that well and to maintain. Like sometimes you're walking a very tightrope, and I like to use the Taika Waititi movie that just came out. Wait, I just lost. Why did I just lose? It's the whiskey. I need to drink more whiskey.
You need a sip of whiskey. It'll come right back. It'll come right back. Yeah. Right back.
The one where he plays Hitler, where Taika Waititi plays Hitler.
Oh, the rabbit one?
Jojo Rabbit. Yeah.
Oh.
Wow. Yeah, so in Jojo Rabbit, when I heard that idea, I was like, oh, the pitfalls. Like, I can see them all just lining up, because if at any point you kind of try and make us feel for any of the Nazis, you're in some way excusing Nazism. And the amazing thing of that movie is it manages to keep its kid-like viewpoint of the world, and it never excuses a single person who chose to be a Nazi for their fundamental choice to be a Nazi. Like, even as it makes you see, okay, yeah, this is a gay Nazi, the subtext of that movie is, but still a Nazi. And it manages to give all of those storylines while wrapping it up in a way that makes you feel like, oh, I got a really good conclusion from all of those. And I chalk that up very much to Taika Waititi he's Maori and he's Jewish. So I can't imagine another person, like a Jewish person of color, absolutely is the best person to tell that story. And I watched that with my jaw on the floor, like, this is a work of staggering genius right here. It's so good. I highly recommend everybody check it out. It won't betray you. Like, I know some people who delayed seeing it just because they were so anxious about it, and seeing all the reviews come out where it was like, y'all, he nailed it. It's both funny and heartbreaking and just fantastic.
Now I can actually maybe see this movie, because I was like, I can't deal. I can't deal.
It was funny because you were watching the actors go on their publicity, their publicity circuit. Talking about Jojo Rabbit, and when they were talking about it, you were like, oh, you can see that they're on a tightrope, and then I was like, but I wonder if the script did it. And then reading it, about what people were saying, I went, dude, whoever wrote this, it's just ingenious. Like, I think he could probably put 4 script people out of business. I was like, if you can do that, I mean, can you imagine just writing something silly? Like, how amazing it would be from him.
Well, so I highly recommend watching Hunt for the Wilderpeople, because he's from New Zealand, and he made a lot of movies in New Zealand. He did What We Do in the Shadows, which I also highly recommend. Those are 2 just straight up comedies, and the comedy is so good and so weird, and you're just like, man, you're great. He also did the last Thor movie, the really funny one. So he's definitely stepped into the upper echelons, but he's managed to keep that very unique sensibility of him. So I'm so excited to see what else he has to do.
You ain't lying. I'm sorry.
You ain't lying?
Ooh, my bad.
Because this is why we don't drink.
That's true. This is why we tend to try to stay to wine on here. When we first started, we were drinking hard liquor, but we stayed to wine, and I'm drinking Jim Beam today. So
I mean, yes, we know Jim Beam, but forgive us, all right?
It was easily accepted.
It is in the house liquor. You try to keep the
quarantine. I got no judgment in me.
It's just you try to keep the in the house liquor in the house, because you don't want to go down.
The only reason I have this is because my dad bought me it's my favorite campfire High West, and my dad for my birthday bought me a bottle, and so I'm drinking my dad bought. Hold on.
Oh my goodness, when parents buy you liquor, it's always
But don't fear, I went ahead and poured myself a second one.
Yeah, no, that's
in case anyone was going to be worried.
That's how life should go.
Okay, honestly, I was just about to be like, do we need to pause? Because I mean, I'll leave it recording while everyone will just roll out.
This is the social impact producer in me. Like, I make sure everyone has everything that they need, including the booths.
We love it so much.
So you have to
you transitioned from like doing work for a boss to doing work for yourself, being self-employed. How was that transition, and how did you get the courage to do that transition? Because steady paychecks are a thing.
Yes, I would say that I'm still in the process of transitioning, because this sort of job that I'm really introducing it to the film industry of sensitivity readers. We're really used to the concept of authenticity reader, which is something like if you have Grey's Anatomy, they have actual doctors who consult with them. That's considered an authenticity reader, which is under the umbrella of sensitivity reading, but not necessarily I use it to focus on what you want. So you either authenticity reading, you want somebody who's part of a group that maybe has a knowledge or skill base that you don't have. Sensitivity reading I usually use to mean somebody like me who's very trained in storytelling. Like, it's a profession for me. It's something that I do on multiple levels, that I can sometimes be an authenticity reader depending on what the subject is. And then there are sort of expert readers, the ones who are more based in like a cultural context. So that's like, I'm never going to grow up in a Filipino family. So if you give me a script, like, tell me about this, how accurate this Filipino family is, I'm going to be like, well, I'm not the person to do that for you. Like, I can tell you very generally if you're falling into stereotype, or like, oh, your construction for women isn't great, but I can't tell you how to sort of populate that with all of the amazing, beautiful colors that the Filipino culture, has. But I have enough friends who do this and who have a story acumen that one of the services I offer is I'll read your script and be like, here's the person you need to talk to. I'll check with them to make sure that they're like into this and that they'll do this for you, and sort of be a matchmaking thing where I'm like, hey, you need to talk to this person. This is the person who will give you the notes you need. So it's very sort of nebulous. It's hard to say there's any one thing I do, because every script is different, every project is different, you have different needs, you have different problems, because there's been scripts I've gotten where I'm like, oh, you're going to need, like, for example, you're going to need like not just a Black lesbian, but like a butch Black lesbian. I am not that person. However, we need to talk about a whole host of other problems before I feel comfortable going to one of my friends who identifies as a Black butch lesbian and being like, hey, I've got this script that needs some help. So it's a new thing that I'm sort of teaching people about, and it can go with a lot of anxiety from writers, because they just don't know what to expect. And development is a process really rooted in trust, because I'm definitely coming from a very specific viewpoint, and you need to trust what I'm telling you, that I'm not just like telling you to be mad at you or to like make you choose or make you tell the story I want you to tell. I'm very invested in authorial intent and making sure that your intent matches what you're saying, and making sure that like, I need you to understand why I'm saying people are going to bump on this, because if you don't understand, you're not going to be able to fix it. And I want to help you fix it and get to the point where you're telling the story you want to tell. So it takes a little bit to get people to trust me, to like understand exactly what I'm doing, that I'm not just going to sit there and be like, no, you cannot do this. I very rarely tell people like a hard line. It's more like, if you want to do this, you're going to have to do more work over here to set this up. Or you've done this and now you have to answer for it later. You can't just drop this bomb and walk away from it, because for some people, they're going to be sitting there like, well, that's a bomb that I'm waiting to go off. And if it never goes off, you're saying something about whatever you said in that beginning. So.
Okay, so one of the reasons that I wanted to have you on the show is because you are in development. So I'm going to ask the interesting question first, and then I'll ask the question I really want to know.
Okay.
So let me ask the interesting question first. So everyone that we've talked to, like producers and screenwriters, are always talking about, there's something called development Gehenna. So it seems like you're part of this development Gehenna. what goes on in this fiery pit of development?
Oh, man, it really depends on your development executive, which also sometimes depends, like, the process of making a movie. If you watch a movie and you're like, that was pretty good, you have no idea the amount of fights, the amount of, like, personal capital people have had to put into just protecting that shell of an idea, because you have people who, everyone has an opinion because art is subjective. Some people want us to be able to say, I did that. Like, that was my note, that was my suggestion, that's my impact on the movie, and be able to hold something up. Some people, I take I'm here project first. And that usually translates into, I'm here writer first. But I need to be able to make sure that the writer and I are on the same page. However, if I'm employed by somebody, the producer, historically I've worked for the money, I've worked for financing producers, so that gives us a certain amount of power, because if your money says you can't do something, well, you can't do something. So my job I saw as to read the project, be like, here's what I think is the best version of the project. And then my job was to get everyone else on board with, like, my best version. But I had to start with my bosses. And if my bosses either didn't agree or were like, no, actively, I don't want you to do that, I'm like, well, okay. So I try and get all of us on the same page. And then I go to the writer. Unless there's another producer who's a part of it, I have to know, sometimes producers come in as, like, the producer and the writer are a team. So usually when I bring in a project that my company is attached to, I'm the writer's producer. So if you want to say something to the writer, you would come to me first. We would hash it out, hopefully between us. If I had to pull in the other producers and then we go to the writer, there's some people who don't do that. So this is the development hell, is it goes through, there's so many people involved, and it really boils down to how well the people behind the scenes are working together and how well they're conveying that to writers. Because I have a lot of friends who are writers, and they'll do things like, I'll usually have already read their script, because I do a lot of, like, here's my vomit draft, what do you think? And I'm like, oh, when you go and you're going to do your next draft, concentrate on this. I think this is a plot hole that you need to plug, but it's really easy right now. Or I'll do that first. I see what this project is. Here's some sort of guiding principles. They'll take it, they'll sell it to somebody, and then they'll send me the notes package, and I'll read them, and I'll be like, there are 5 notes on here that are saying 3 different things, and if you try and address all of them, you're going to have a script, a story that just doesn't make sense. And that is usually when there's 3 different forces in that development process, and you have one poor development exec who's like, well, none of you will tell me which side we want to go for, so you end up with all the notes. And then the rewriting process can get very political, because which notes do you take? Which notes do you don't? How you sometimes don't know who's giving you which note. You don't know who you're potentially alienating. Like, it gets so political, and that, I think, is what people mean by development hell, is if there's not one adult, like, driving the bus, turning around saying, kids, you sit down and you talk it out like you are, you know that you can, and you just have everyone throwing pieces of paper in the air, it can get.
How long does this normally take?
The average, I think, for a script, for features, I think is still 10 years. That's a lot of potential people touching things. It's very rare. If you, in the best case, you're looking at least probably 1 to 2 years of development. You shoot it, you have 1 to 2 years of post and editing, and then whenever it fits into the schedule, it gets released. So you could make a movie and feasibly be like 2 years from when you shot the movie, and the culture could have changed. So if you sometimes watch movies and you're like, oh, that's a kind of a dated reference, that's generally why, is because the Overton window moves faster than our actual production process can keep up. So
we kind of sort of understand. I think it was like one reference in our upcoming audio book, and we were like, oh, wait, that doesn't apply anymore. It did not date well at all. Maybe people will just forgive us, and we'll just keep moving.
Paige, you had a question, right?
Yeah. So you were talking about all that work that you have to do, and you have to, like, get this person and this person to try to talk. But then how do you build that trust with the writer to trust you as your authority that's kind of fighting for them in that room that they're not in?
I tend to find it goes pretty quickly because there are a lot of people in this industry who will only read a third or a half of a script. Or sometimes bosses, I've had to cover for bosses who didn't read scripts at all, and they won't tell me that before the meeting, and we'll get 2 sentences in, I'll be like, you did not read the script, and I have to just step in, because that's the other thing is I might talk to you about that later, but I'm not going to call you out in front of a writer. Like, that's unprofessional, and that is not endear the writer to us or make them trust us. But usually writers respond because I like to, I call it wrapping myself in story. Like, I will dig into your story, and I'm not only just thinking of your story, I'm thinking about the implications of the greater world of your story. Because, well, if you do this, then that also means over here, this thing. For example, there was a sci-fi pilot that I watched where the main bad guy, the way that he killed somebody was he could mind control pigeons. Okay. That's a really high level of technology right there. If you can mind control pigeons, that also means that you can mind control other birds. You could cause so much devastation with birds. And if you're thinking about that, the implications of that technology and how it kind of filters down to potentially other animals, but also humanity, the second you introduce a piece of technology, humanity goes, how can we mess with this and make it do not what it was intended to do, but exactly what it was intended to, just in a way you never expected. So I'm thinking that creatively about a script, and it really comes through when you talk to a writer, when they can tell when you've not only read it, but given it the due consideration that they hope everybody is giving. So I like to really dig in and pull out themes that you may have talked about, or you had a really interesting setup here about X theme, and it never really resonated, but I actually think it's a stronger theme than the one that you pulled forward, that I think you pulled forward because you thought it was more sellable. But now let me tell you how we can do this in a way that's like an action movie, but still saying interesting things about the culture. And that's sort of where the social impact producing comes from. You don't have to sit on your soapbox and lecture people about the ills of the world. You just have to make something a metaphor, but carry that metaphor through and understand how it works and how it doesn't. And I'm really, really good at kind of helping people find that balance. And I see what you're going for 100%, and I'm here for it. Let's figure out how we do that in a way that our bosses and the people with the money are going to let us get away with this. And so I take a very joyful, I'm excited to work on your project. If we're sitting here having a conversation, I've already read your stuff and think it's great. Let's go. I think there's something in it that we can really do, and it's going to make a great movie and people are going to enjoy it. So I am your partner in this. I am here for you. Ask me questions. Ask me the dumb question, because it's probably not a dumb question, or if you're asking that question, there's a reason for it, and let's figure out why. So I just try and really be opening and accepting, and you can, one of the things is you can mess up in front of me. You're paying me to mess up in front of me, and me be oh, okay, here's why people aren't going to really respond to that, but here's how they might. Let's workshop how we'll get them to the place where you want to, because writing is manipulation. Writing is manipulating the world that you want people to see. But humanity taking that little piece of technology and kind of doing the unexpected thing, they're going to take every little thing you get of your world. If you're doing well, take Harry Potter, for example. That fandom has dug into those books. They loved them, and then they started ripping them apart and finding the seams of it. And they found the seams of some of J.K. Rowling's not as great things as well, that she is now on the internet showing us are not great things that she believes. They found them in the books. And then they sat around and they started talking about how you fix them. And those are the conversations that I'm having sort of with the actual writers. And it's very fun for me, and I try and make it fun for the writers, because no one just wants you sitting there being you done messed up today. No, you wrote something. You wrote something and not only invited me into your world, that came out of you. And I understand how precious and how vulnerable that makes you in some ways. So I just kind of try and be really respectful of the writing process in a way that I think our world doesn't necessarily encourage people to be.
That is amazing.
Yeah, I love it.
I think they say
I think it's like my poet told, though.
Yeah, I love this so much. I was just thinking, I was they say one of the least respected people is the screenwriter. Then when we had another writer on that was he thinks it's the hardest job in Hollywood because everybody else has a script to work off of, but you have to produce the script, and that they're going to work off of, and then it has to go through all of this. So that's amazing. I do have one question I've been meaning to ask from the beginning, and then I have a narcissism question. So I'm going to do AD. And Jade is already hanging her head low. Just drink some more wine. Yeah, we're not a producer. I'm down to like this tiny little bit of liquid. I'm like,
it's okay.
Half sipping. And look at her!
Scotch this is my second. Remember, I poured myself too because I was prepared.
Yeah. I was not at all. So my first question is, how is it that you, I think you answered this already, but I'm going to ask anyway because
I'm for clarification.
I'm slow on the uptake some days. How is it that you find the balance between sensitivity and money? And do you ever have to just go ahead and sell out?
Well, because I actually think there's money in the sensitivity reading. Like, we're in a world that has more and more fractured audiences. There's more people vying for attention. There's more people creating content. You have like TikTok doing short form content. You've got so many ways of accessing just things that haven't really existed in the past. The more people vying for attention, the more valuable it is if you can pull in as many audiences as possible. So if you have a sensitivity reader, if you want to tell a story that is sort of outside of the world you know and your purview, like I don't necessarily believe in that whole edict of write what you know. I would say it's more write what you understand. Because if, like, this goes back to if I can get you to understand, like, why it's important to say, why the difference between you don't have preferred pronouns, you just have pronouns. It's not a preference. I actually have preferred pronouns because I'm non-binary. I don't care fundamentally what pronouns you use. My preferred pronouns are either she or they, because most people agree that I'm not a dude. But if you use he pronouns, I'm not gonna, it's not gonna like ping on me in the way somebody who has transitioned from like male to female or assigned male at birth to female. They don't have preferred female pronouns, they just have female pronouns. So like if I can get you to understand the difference between that, that will be reflected in your writing in a way that reflects in the world you're building. So I tend to try and, it's not just my voice, my first line of defense, so it were, is I'll explain something to you and then I will link to a bunch of articles written by people who are experiencing the thing that you're trying to talk about. So I try and bring those voices to the front and be like, you definitely don't take my word for it. I very much encourage research. Like, don't trust what I'm saying. Use what I'm saying as a jumping off point, do your own research. I will direct you. I'll like cut through all of the research and the years and years of like, I like what this voice is saying, but there's just something that's pinging about me that's wrong about it. And then something will come out, they'll milkshake duck themselves and you're like, oh, that's what I was pinging on. And so I can sort of direct people, I'm a shortcut. I'll direct people to, here's where you start your research. Here are people who link to other people. Rachel Elizabeth Cargill is one person who I tend to start with people who are just starting this journey where I'm like, she's great and she'll link you to other people. She'll link you to her own stuff. Do your own research. So I'm not trying to be dictatorial in what I'm saying, but like most of the time, this is a problem of you haven't surrounded yourselves with the voices of the people whose stories you're not necessarily trying to tell, but incorporate into your world. So I just make sure that those people's voices are being pushed up in your reading list. So that's a lot of what I do.
I love that. I love it. Okay. So it has been a long interview, and I feel terrible about that. But I have to ask narcissistic questions before we go. It's just like, when you are talking about the passion of reading, I'm just like, could you read a novel or two of mine, for crying out loud?
Oh, absolutely. I love reading.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
Honestly, I was going to go with the script, and then I was like, nah, it feels way too Hollywood to do that. No, I'm going to go with a novel. I'm joking. Don't do it.
Don't do it. Don't do it. I mean,
it's so joking.
Yeah, absolutely. We're poets. But, poetry.
I mean, I may have already ordered a couple of your novels, but I won't embarrass you.
Did.
This is yours, and I won't embarrass you.
Oh, Lord.
Oh, God, that would be terrible if you ordered. Would you like your money back?
I can get it.
My money went exactly where it needs to be, and I didn't order them through Amazon, so.
Okay.
Jade,
so the last question, let me clarify. Y'all, please do buy our novels, but know that they're not actually novels. They're like literary life guides, so get ready for them essays in the middle of our books. Yeah, get ready, because that's where they
It's
are.
fascinating because I'm one of those people who goes down like internet rabbit holes. So I'll be like, I don't know anything about e-publishing, or I don't know anything about like the independent book world. So I'll start doing that, and then I'll just read like 10 or 20 things about it, and I'll come up in 2 weeks and be like, oh, this is a whole subculture, y'all. Let me talk to you about it, and how it's like arranged itself, and how it looks like this other subculture. And like, I very much, because I find stories within the stories. Like humans, we basically, I feel like one of the reasons that we really respond to books and stuff is we really think of ourselves in story form. Like a human life is obviously not a story, because world's too random, as we see as we live in, like, everyone kept rolling a 1 darkest timeline. But we do think of our own lives. I feel like we think of like this little, here's stories that are indicative of who I am as a person. And somebody, I could tell somebody that, and they'd be like, well, I see a through line, but I don't understand, because they don't know your context for it. But like, everyone is just a story. So I tend to just turn everything into a, like, let me tell you the story of like the fandom of Buffy the Vampire Slayer in the 90s, or let me tell you the story of the whole like romance ebook culture. Fascinating, still ongoing and fascinating. So.
Oh yeah,
It's very fascinating.
But where can people check out more about you online? Because you're amazing, and people need to know.
Write a book. Way.
By the way, yeah.
You should just write a book about the stories that are in stories of everyday life.
You should.
Maybe one day. I'm starting to, my COVID pivot has been more, I have more time to actually sit down and start writing things, or like, I'll see a meme and I'll go, ooh, please let me dissect this for you. So I think I'm probably going to try and revamp my website and really do the blog part, where I actually take things that are happening now in the culture and be like, okay, so let me put the sensitivity read on this. My website is alexcresswick.com. On socials, my social tends to be Aleekza, Aleekza. I'm on Twitter and Instagram and TikTok, but it's honestly just mostly pictures and videos of my cats being really cute. I'm very much part of like the cat corner of the internet. I'm really here for the internet. Is 90% cat pictures, 10% everything else, and that's how I like my ratio.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it so much. I'm a cat lover. I have cats, so absolutely.
How many cats do you have? Wait, now we started talking about cats.
Can you answer this question in like 2 sentences? Because it was in my head and I meant to ask. Maybe. So your job, how did you take care of yourself emotionally? Because that's a lot of arguing and thinking and stepping around people's feelings.
One of it helps that right now where I am in the job, people are approaching me. So it's not me trying to be like, hey, or being hired in to talk to a writer who's potentially not open to it. And if you've either acknowledged or you've realized, ooh, maybe I should just talk to someone about that, we've already come to a place where like, you're willing to like have this conversation. Also, I very much acknowledge up front that I have struggled with these things. I still struggle with these things. I am not perfect. My voice is not the only one that should be in this conversation. I just try and like very much make it about us making a better world together, and just trying to protect the most vulnerable of us, because that's sort of my bar, is like, who does this idea fuck over? Who? And so I take that sort of route. I do have some arguments online, but I take those as I'm not actually arguing to change the person who I'm arguing with, because I don't actually think I will ever change their mind. It's mostly for the people who are reading in the lurkers, who maybe they have that idea of like, I know this is wrong, but I can't articulate why. Cool. I'll sit here and have an argument in the comments with somebody, and I will articulate why, that you can read and then maybe take that information and it'll percolate in someone else's head. I also just try and make everything a joke, because like fundamentally the things that I'm dealing with, once you really start deconstructing them, they're absurd. Like it's so like the idea of racism, sexism, homophobia, they get blown out of the water like the second you interrogate the simple idea that they're presented. There are 500 people who demonstrate that it is incorrect. And that is absurd, the fact that you can literally look at somebody who blows that idea out of the water and still go, but I'm gonna believe this anyways. So I just really take the sort of stance that what you are saying is inherently absurd, and I am laughing at you. the people who realize that and laugh with me, like, they get it. So I try and just kind of take that approach where I'm not necessarily making light of it, but I am definitely mocking you while I do it in a way that is so high level that the people who know, they get it. And the people who don't know, they understand that they're being made a joke of, but they don't understand the joke and it drives them nuts. And I am in the deepest part of my soul, I'm like the good troll. I'm the troll who uses the trolliness for the lulz and the good side of the force, as it were. Not that I actually believe that the force is dark side, good side, but yeah, I kind of try and like, I sneak in these jokes and occasionally I'll have people who will be like, I saw what you did there. I'm like, yeah, you did. Yeah, you did. And this person, because they always know. They know, but they cannot figure it out. And the journey for them to actually deconstruct that joke and figuring out what I am mocking them for is the journey that I want them to go on. So like, hey guys, I'm working on multiple levels here.
You win. Like, it's like either way, I win.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so where can we check out some more of this winning things? Because, you know, in our show, we really like to promote people. So where can they check you out some more on the internet?
Right now, it's my website and any of those socials. Like I said, like Twitter is mostly me reblogging other people. And then like, my cat was really cute today, guys. So, yeah.
And the website was AliceCresswick.com, right?
AliceCresswick.com.
Okay. Just wanted to hear it one more time.
One more time. Make sure people get it. So please check out our guest that we had today. It's been really amazing drinking with her, like virtually. It's been amazing. Thank you for it.
Cheers.
And I'm going to just go ahead and wrap us up. You can find out everything your ladies are doing on www.andwethought.com. While you're there, take a minute, go to the ladies page, go down to the middle and see the charities that we proudly support. Yes, we know the times are hard and money might not be a thing for you right now, but if you're doing all that spring cleaning and you have some things to donate, please consider donating it to them, or you just have some knowledge that you need to share with them, please do that also. We thank you in advance. And just remember, wisdom is all around you if
you're open to finding it and accepting it. So peace and love, you guys, from Winona.
Oh, we've been hyped today. And Jade.
Bye-bye. I'm sorry.